Hello and welcome to Byjus IAS. Byjus IAS current affairs classes. So a little lag, a little delay, but nevertheless the backend team was trying very hard, and I am in front of you to discuss today's newspaper. So 16th of March, the day is Saturday, and I hope all of you are enjoying this wonderful sunny morning. So there are multiple articles which are important when we talk about the newspaper articles today. And the topics that would be covered are these. As you can see, looking to the future on St. Patrick's Day. When we are looking at certain articles, the articles are highly important in this particular sense. So the first article focuses on St. Patrick's Day, page number 10. Article is important for GS2 International Relations. I repeat, article is important for GS2 International Relations. So when we talk about St. Patrick's Day, when we talk about such kind of special occasions, these occasions are celebrated looking at India's international relations. When I say India's international relations, how are they important? And what is exactly that we should focus upon as a part of this? Let's have a look. So in terms of talking about India's international relations, this is primarily a part of knowing as to India's relationship with the country Ireland. Ireland is again a country which can be equated with United Kingdom or Great Britain, but it broke off from it and it has a history of its own. Even that portion of the UK was colonized by the Great Britain or by the British, just like India was. And when I say that it was colonized, both the countries, India and Ireland, tried to maintain friendly relations for a long period of time. So when I say friendly relations are supposed to be maintained, what exactly happened and how was it dealt with in terms of international relations? Let's have a look. When you are a colony, then multiple things work, just like a colonized economy works. And when you get liberated, that liberation forces you to think about nation building. Nation building is highly important, and knowing about how the nation would contribute or how we can contribute to the entire nation is highly, highly important. So let's understand about the importance of St. Patrick's Day. I hope you are able to see what is being written on the screen. So this basically celebrates 75 years of India and Ireland relationship. When I say 75 years of India-Ireland relationship, when we escaped the shackles of the British, both the regions, which means shackles from oppression, shackles from exploitation, then a new journey started. And that new journey started with diplomatic relations. Diplomatic relations basically mean establishing diplomatic ties with the other country. Here, the country in question is Ireland. So India-Ireland diplomatic relations started way back in 1950s, where India opened its embassy in Ireland, in the capital of Ireland, Dublin, in the year 1951. Thereafter, Ireland started with its embassy in India in 1960s, to be precise, 1964. So when these things happened and when you start exchanging pleasantries in the form of establishing diplomatic relations are when the ties with that particular country start. When I say that the ties with that particular country start, what exactly do we mean by that? We mean that we have to focus on primarily three things. We have to focus on economic ties, we have to focus on cultural ties, as well as political ties. When we talk about political ties, the political ties are supposed to be established on the basis of the kind of polity which is there in that country. So I can call it democracy. If it's a democracy and India is a democracy, so it automatically becomes politically important for India, and it is a little easier to develop ties with that particular country, unlike China, unlike USSR, that claim themselves to be a democracy but actually are not. Followed by that, we talk about cultural ties. So when the cultural ties are being talked about, cultural ties have a historical partnership or a historical aspect to it. Before independence, or let's be precise, in the 19th century, we had multiple Irishmen and Irish women coming to India, and we share a past of freedom struggles with that particular region. So if you wish to know, and this article even mentions that there have been cultural exchanges between both the countries with respect to Rabindranath Tagore writing poems for the Irishmen and the Irish women, W.B. again, a poet who writes poetic narrative with respect to India-Ireland relations, and Sister Nivedita. The Irish missionaries had made significant contributions in the Indian culture, in the Indian education system, and especially in Indian music. So hence, we share a historical past when it comes to cultural exchanges. And this historical past basically allows us to make sure wherever we are heading and whatever we are doing, we have a lot of culture in the past. So cultural exchange is something which is extremely important. And which is why if you look at developing international relations with any other country, this thing has started to play a huge role. And lastly, when we talk about economic ties primarily depend on two things. One is trade and the second is investment. Cross-border investment and cross-border investment and trade. When we are talking about cross-border investment, that investment basically comes along as a part of either FDI, foreign direct investment, or FII, foreign institutional investment, something which is extremely important. And thereafter, when we talk about trade, trade is cross-border trade that includes imports and exports. Via the shared relationship between both the countries, India is encouraging imports from Ireland and we are encouraging exports from India to Ireland. Followed by that, the investments that India is attracting and India is doing in Ireland are also increasing. May not be a substantial amount, but still it is on the rise. And this is something which is to be celebrated as a part of India-Ireland 75th year of association in the form of St. Patrick's Day. When we determine the importance of a country, primarily you have to remember the economic ties, the cultural ties, and the political ties. There can be one more tie, which is security. Now that security angle is not with Ireland, that is primarily with neighbors. It is with Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Bangladesh, Nepal, but not with Ireland for sure. There is no security interest or security conflict when it comes to Ireland. When we talk about the diplomatic relations and when they had started, we basically have to see as to what is Ireland's position or Irish position on the global scenario presently. So, speaking about the global scenario, that how do we look at the global scenario? The global scenario, do we share the same kind of values when it comes to the conflicts that are going on in the world, whether it is the Russia-Ukraine conflict or it is the Israel-Hamas conflict? Where do we stand when we talk about this kind of an understanding? So in this particular case, Ireland is holding international law accountable on humanitarian grounds, supporting the cause of humans or supporting the cause of protecting humans or human beings. Whatever atrocities are meted out to people, whether it is by Russia on Ukrainians or by Israelis on Hamas, these are the things that Ireland is talking about. So basically, human relief. This can be a little bone of contention between both the countries, reason being that India has not come out in the open and specifically stated its side or its accountability towards one country or blame on one country against the other country. This is not what India has done. But Ireland has clearly put the onus and accountability on the stronger power, trying to belittle the lesser stronger power or the inferior country by meting out atrocities on the civilians. So this might become a bone of contention in the global scenario in today's day and age. Followed by that, one extremely important information, and that can be put as a part of historical tie with Ireland, and that is the adoption of something like the directive principles of state policy. Do you remember? Directive principles of state policy ranging from Article 36 to Article 51, they have been adopted from the Irish Constitution. So when I say that they have been adopted from the Irish Constitution, this is something that you should remember, and in fact sources of the Constitution are asked in the examination. So this trivia is important from prelims point of view, might be asked in the mains examination as well. So this is a brief intro about India-Ireland relation, and whatever information has been given to you is important from the point of view of the examination. So I hope that this article is clear, right? Moving on to the next article, so there are certain important points that I have listed over here about history, that both countries have shared history of freedom struggles with nationalist leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, Eamon de Valera, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So we have shared this kind of an association, which is why the cultural exchanges between India and Ireland have been there ever since the 19th century. It is not something which is new, right? Now coming to the next article that focuses on economy, a very, very important article and a must-read article for all the aspirants specifically preparing for any economic examination as well as UPSC. Because when we talk about inflation, in this article particularly, we are focusing on food inflation. I repeat, we are focusing on food inflation. When I say food inflation, what exactly is it and how is it impacting people like you and me? It is important. So in this particular case, one method or measure, or you can say an index of calculating inflation is Consumer Price Index. Consumer Price Index or CPI is also called as retail inflation, and this retail inflation comes into play because it directly affects the end consumer. I repeat, it directly impacts you and me. Any kind of inflation that is calculated by the authorities. The authorities primarily include one statistical agency these days, and that agency is by the name of National Statistics Office, NSO. National Statistics Office as well as Labour Bureau, they combine the data or they use the data of understanding how much do people make, and accordingly they pitch in to calculate what exactly the rate of inflation would be. But the rate of inflation is based on a certain basket of goods. I repeat, it is based on certain basket of goods. This basket of goods includes a lot of items. It includes certain manufactured items. It includes energy items. Energy items mean power, oil, electricity, coal, crude, diesel, etc. All of these items are included, as well as primary articles. Primary articles primarily mean agricultural products. These products are also included. When I talk about agricultural products, what is it that is forming a part and how is it forming a part? Please try and understand. This is primarily the thing that affects majority of the people. This is the thing that affects majority of the people. This is the thing that affects you and me. And this article precisely talks about that. If you look at the title, it says the food factor. What is the food factor? Food factor is what have we included in the entire basket. The entire basket includes multiple items to calculate consumer price index. Within consumer price index, something that is impacting people like you and me is in particular the food items for which the authorities calculate consumer food price index, CFPI. Now the article is talking about CFPI, where it says that CPI prominently, if we talk about this overall, CPI has not changed in the past few months. CPI has not changed. But CFPI, Consumer Food Price Index, has changed. Or let's say Consumer Food Price Index has increased. It has accelerated by 36 basis points, which means 0.36%. And it has increased to roughly 8.66% in the month of February as compared to the month of January. In a single month, this has been a very big increase, because if you look at the entire average of the entire year, the increase would be significant. And this is the food inflation that we are facing in the country at the rate of 8.66%. So what is the cause of concern? This is what we have to understand. What is the cause of concern, and which is why this article uses a very good line. It says the prices, the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is a victim of the prices of agricultural items. CPI does not see significant change. What sees a significant change is the food price index. And food price index is based on multiple factors, prominently what kind of food products are increasing in prices. This is what we have to understand. This is what we have to focus upon. So when we talk about food, here the focus is on vegetables. And what vegetables? We are not talking about specific vegetables, we are talking about generic vegetables. Those generic vegetables are called top vegetables. One of these vegetables, and you would agree to it, is made or is cooked in every household on a daily basis. At least one, probably 2 or 3 are being cooked in every household on a daily basis. At least the vegetarians, what else do they eat? We are talking about tomatoes, onions and potatoes. So you would agree, we are either having tomatoes or onions or potatoes. Let's say onions are not consumed in every household on a daily basis, but surely tomatoes and potatoes are consumed on an average, or you can say by majority of households on a daily basis. Now you will be surprised to know that the prices of onions have increased in the past few months by more than 22%. And the same goes with the prices of tomatoes, which have increased by 42%. And this is not this particular time. If you remember, last year, which is 2023, the prices of tomatoes went as high as 180 rupees to 200 rupees per kg, at least in the Delhi NCR region. So it basically means that if prices of these basic vegetables are increasing to that tune, So obviously it is contributing to what? It is contributing to high consumer food price index. And this particular category is significantly contributing to food inflation. Now, when we talk about food inflation at the CPI level, it is heavily impacting your and my pocket. So, what are the government measures? What is the government doing with respect to what is the government doing, or what are the government measures in order to reduce the prices, in order to control the prices? So, it's a simple demand and supply mismatch, and you would understand as a very generic economics concept, when the demand is high and the supply is low, what happens to the prices? The prices rise, the prices increase. It's a demand supply thing, it's a demand supply mismatch. So what the government did was, government banned the export of these top vegetables some months back. Just like the government banned the exports of wheat last year, government this time banned the export of certain vegetables a couple of months back. When you ban the export, what are you trying to do? You are trying to bridge this mismatch of supply and demand. You are trying to increase the supply. When you increase the supply, automatically the prices are balanced. This is what the government did in order to make sure that the food prices are cooled down. But this went in vain. This did not lead to anything particular or anything substantial. Probably, so you can say that onion prices have escalated by 22%, they would have escalated by 25%. So that is all what they did. Now, when we talk about banning exports, banning anything is not a solution, but still the government tried. Over and above, these crops were supposed, or these vegetables were supposed to be subsidized, and certain subsidies were granted on it by the government of India, but they did not take further effect. Reason being that the people, they did not come out with that kind of produce. If the produce is limited, no matter how much subsidies you give, the prices would still remain high, because the produce is limited, the supply is limited. The prices would still remain high. Even if the government is granting a subsidy, still the prices would be high. So it would be heavy on the government pocket, or it would be heavy on the consumer. Either of the two, someone has to bear the cost. And these are the government measures which were taken, but both the government measures did not result into anything substantial. So this article, or this particular thing, or this particular logic focus comes at a time when the government is going in for elections, in an election year. In an election year, this can act as an undercurrent if the government doesn't control the prices of vegetables and food items, because it might impact the government. All that we care about at the local level, and most of the people, majority people at the bottom of the pyramid care about, is how much is a certain thing impacting my pocket, which is inflationary tendency. This is something that we realize, or this is something that we have to understand. Now, a little facts about CPI, important for the examination, and whatever we discuss from now in this particular case is important for prelims in particular. Consumer price index is an inflation measure at the retail, at the consumer level. This impacts the consumer in particular. Directly the consumer is impacted through this. CPI is used primarily by agencies in order to be able to control inflation properly at the consumer stage, and CPI is calculated on the basis of a basket of goods which does not have industrial items per se. The focus primarily would be on articles which are consumed by consumers like you and me on a daily basis. So prominently they are food items, energy items, and some more items, like it would include a matchbox, it would include utensils, clothes, apparels, garments. All these things would be included because these impact the consumer on a daily basis. Now, when we talk about the consumer, in this particular case, what is it that we are focusing upon? The focus is that we need to know inflation at the consumer level. But the problem was always that consumers are of different category. So consumers from the rural area are different from the consumers who are working in the industrial field. Consumers who are working as an agricultural laborer are different from the consumers who are working as a part of service industry in the urban areas, which is why one common CPI did not do. So we started to calculate different types of CPI for different types of consumers. So first CPI is industrial worker, consumers or the people who work in the industry, their consumption habits are different. Followed by that, consumption at the agricultural level, which means agricultural laborer, the farmers basically, their consumption habits are different. Then comes the rural worker. Rural worker are those people who live in rural areas but are not engaged in the agricultural sector. And lastly, urban non-manual employee, UNME, urban non-manual employee. These people are the people who are living in urban areas and not doing manual work. Prominently, they are the people who are employed by the service sector. So these prominent indices were calculated and they used to be compiled majorly by the Labour Bureau to give out what is the rate of inflation. Until 2012-2013, when new indices were proposed. And these new indices were prominently two: rural, urban, which means a separate and a consolidated index for rural areas and a separate and a consolidated index for urban areas. These are two separate indices, rural and urban. When I talk about rural, there would be one consolidated index, urban areas, the other consolidated index, with a base year of 2011-12. This was to be compiled by the National Statistics Organization, and this is something that has to be applied in that particular sense. So this is consumer price index, new measures, and these are old measures. Now what you have to understand is that after introduction of new measures, the old measures have not been discontinued. They still exist. Old measures, they still exist. They are not discontinued. So in totality, we are calculating all measures because the purpose of all the measures are different, right? So this is something that you should be remembering for the examination. So please keep a track of what is the inflationary tendency that we are talking about in the future that would keep coming on. So we are in the month of March, we are given the figures for the month of February. Now for the month of March, figures would come in April, and you can expect a question in prelims from this particular topic, knowing about where the consumer price index heads. One more thing that you should remember is the concept of core inflation. The concept of core inflation is, so this is basically the whole CPI or the whole inflation, even WPI for that matter, which includes all the items, the entire basket, all items come as a part of this index. But on the other hand, when we talk about core inflation is calculated for certain think tanks, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, by excluding food and fuel items. It excludes food and fuel items. The reason behind this is that core inflation basically should focus only on those things that have a long-lasting impact on the inflationary tendency of a country. Food inflation is there today, it might not be there tomorrow. Or food prices keep on fluctuating like this. They have this kind of a graph, which is not very beneficial in policy making, because if you make a policy at this stage, the prices would not remain at this stage, they might come down, or rather they would come down. So if you frame your policy when the prices of food articles are high, then your policy would be of a different type. Your policy would be anti-inflationary policy, but the prices would further fall. In that particular case, your policy will not be very much useful in the long term. Similarly, fuel items. Fuel items are not in our hands. They're not in the hands of the government, neither the authority, nor RBI, no one. Fuel items prices are in the hands of people who are actually exporting fuel to India. So in order to frame a more stable and a more long-lasting policy, food and fuel items are things that have to be excluded in calculating inflation. And this is something that is worked upon only at the level of think tanks, only at the level of the Reserve Bank, only at the level of the government. There's no point in disclosing this because at your and my level, at the retail level, what matters is the prices of food and fuel, right? Now coming to the third article for today. This article is on polity, GS2, appearing on page number 12. A long-lasting debate, or a debate that has been going on for a long time. What is the debate focusing on? It is focusing on Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA. So the very first question that I'm asked a lot is that is the government focusing on, or does the government focus on CAA or NRC together? And the second question is the CAA NRC the same? So the first question, basically this question, CAA NRC are not same. They are completely different. So do not confuse both these terms. Please don't confuse these terms. These terms are absolutely different. We should basically focus on understanding that how these terms are helping us or how these terms are impacting us. First, understand NRC applies on Indian citizens, right? CAA is basically applicable on illegal immigrants who are not Indian citizens. Illegal immigrants who are not Indian citizens. This is something that I want all of you to remember. What is it focusing on? It is focusing on illegal immigrants who are not Indian citizens. So what illegal immigrants are we talking about? And who are illegal immigrants? Illegal immigrants have been defined by the government of India, and this is a standard definition that is being followed all across the world. The first part of being an illegal immigrant is that you don't have a valid visa to travel to any country, right? Valid visa, official documents, travel papers, whatever you might call it, you don't have this. And the second is your period of stay according to your visa is over. You have overstayed. So if you get a visa for 4 years, but you are staying for extended period, more than 4 years without a valid visa, then you will be called an illegal immigrant. If you are an illegal immigrant, you will be tried under the Passport Act and the Foreigners Act. The Passport Act and the Foreigners Act. These are the two prominent laws that you would be tried on, whoever is an illegal immigrant. In this particular case, when we talk about the Citizenship Amendment Act, there are multiple questions which have been posed on this particular law being unconstitutional because it goes against the right to equality. When I say right to equality, it basically means it goes against Article 14 as it does not take into account the illegal immigrants of other religions. It takes into account illegal immigrants only of certain religions, 6 religions to be precise. So it takes into account Hindu, Sikh, Jains, Parsis, Buddhist, Christians, these 6 religion countries, these 6 religion people. So basically non-Muslim migrants from 3 countries. These 3 countries are Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. So Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh, if you are coming from either of these 3 countries and you belong to 6 religions, you will be granted Indian citizenship if you have entered India before 31st December to 2014. This is the cutoff date. This is the cutoff date which is being provided. Now, according to the Citizenship Act originally of 1955, this particular amendment was done in 2019. When we talk about the amendment which was done in 2019, it is termed as unconstitutional, reason being that it focuses on certain religions. It is a religion-based citizenship granting exercise. Citizenship granting exercise should be irrespective of religion, but now it focuses on religion, which is why it is being challenged in a court of law. When I say it is being challenged in a court of law, it is being challenged by the Indian Union Muslim League, which has filed a petition in the Supreme Court about this going against the right to equality and against the ethos of the fundamental right of following religion in India. And it is also being challenged by Democratic Youth Federation of India that wants a stay on the application of this particular law. The concerns I have discussed over here, and they are heavily criticizing this particular law, knowing that this goes against, as I said, the right to equality. The second thing that you need to remember is NRC is different from Citizenship Amendment Act. National Register of Citizens has nothing got to do with the nation so far. It has only been applicable, or it has been applicable in limited areas in one state in particular, which is Assam. And whoever was an immigrant at that point of time, whoever entered India before a certain date can be considered to be a citizen, but whoever entered India after that date is being put as a part of, or his name is being looked for in this particular part. If that name comes up, then that person has to be deported from India, because then that person is not living in India with legal papers. This focuses on Indian citizens, whereas CAA does not focus on Indian citizens. It focuses on illegal immigrants from 6 religions coming from 3 countries, and they entered India before the 31st of December 2014. This is something that you have to remember. So I've given certain details. One thing that you might be interested to know is significance of challenge to Section 6A of the Assam Accord. Assam Accord is absolutely different, which happened way back in 1986. It basically said that cutoff date 24th of March 1971 was to determine citizenship in Assam. Challenges against this provision, and the CAA raises questions about the interpretation and implementation of the Assam Accord. What is the interpretation and what is the implementation of the Assam Accord? This particular thing is different from the implementation of the CAA. And as I explained to you, that they are seeking a stay on these rules which have been included as a part of the Citizenship Amendment Act. Highly important. Now coming to next article, which is a governance article. This is important for GS paper number 2, appears on page number 13 in today's newspaper. So as you know that the debate on electoral bonds has been going on, and that debate finally has taken steam. It had taken steam after the Supreme Court verdict calling electoral bonds as unconstitutional. But finally, when we talk about electoral bonds and who actually donated the money, the list has been disclosed by SBI, and that particular list has the names of companies which are such that have donated in a majority fashion to a single party. So just to give you perspective, the list that has been disclosed, roughly 12,000 crore rupees have been donated since the bonds have come into existence. That is from 2018 up till 2023. The entire donation that has taken place, this donation, 50%, around 50% of the donation goes to one party, that is the BJP, and the rest of the parties, All India Congress, Trinamool Congress, DMK, etc. Some of those parties combined have got around 45% of the contribution, and the remaining smaller parties have got rest of the 5% contribution. So look at the headline, many top electoral bond donors were under scanner of ED and IT department. The names that have come up, the names are Future Gaming and Hotel Services PR, Kolkata-based companies with a common director like Keventer Food Park, MKJ Enterprises, then Yashoda Super Speciality, Aurobindo Pharma, Shirdi Sai Electricals. The names are not important. But what is important is that these very names and these many people, they were already under the scanner of Enforcement Directorate and the IT department. Now the point is that are electoral bonds illegal to invest in? That is the question. Look, if there is a company and that company is under Enforcement Directorate, that company is operating, it is doing its operations, whatever business it is in, purchase, sale, trading, whatever kind of business they are in and whatever they are doing. When you try to operate, when you do some kind of trading, whatever you do, purchase and sale that you do. So even if you are under the scanner of ED, it doesn't stop you from purchasing electoral bonds. You can still go ahead and purchase electoral bonds. Who's stopping you from purchasing electoral bonds? So the debate is not that why did they purchase electoral bonds. Debate is that electoral bonds are unconstitutional. And now they are under the scanner that as to why they purchased the electoral bonds. Anybody can purchase electoral bonds. I can go and purchase electoral bonds. You can, a company can, whoever you see can, who qualifies according to the definition of electoral bond scheme. And they can purchase electoral bonds in any denomination. Now the point is that if these companies are investing in electoral bonds and according to the Supreme Court verdict or Supreme Court judgment or Supreme Court rules, they are calling it unconstitutional, right? This is what they are calling it, unconstitutional. When you call it unconstitutional, what is the ground on which you are calling it unconstitutional? That it goes against the Right to Information Act. It goes against the privacy that has to be maintained and the RTI of the people, that RTI right that belongs to you and me. This RTI can be understood to be an important part of right to life, Article 21, and right to freedom of speech, Article 19. If RTI is being violated, then my fundamental rights, that is the basic structure doctrine, is being violated, which is why this is called as unconstitutional. Why is it unconstitutional? Because it violates my fundamental right. And fundamental right violation is a part of basic structure violation, which is why it is termed as unconstitutional. Now SBI has disclosed the names. So how is it unconstitutional now? This is the biggest question. If till the time they were not disclosing names, it was called unconstitutional because it was going against this. Now it has disclosed the names. How is it unconstitutional now is something that is highly important. So the entire debate is around what to be done with these companies that were already under the income tax department and the ED scanner. Nothing can be done per se, but still this has come into light again. Now they will dig into it as to who is the owner of the company, who is the promoter of the company, who pushed this company to purchase bonds, as to why would you purchase bonds of that company, what love do you have for this particular political party, why have you given so much money in terms of bonds, because these are just, the name is bond. One more thing that you should remember from examination point of view, that the name is bond, right? And it is not James Bond, it is electoral bond. When you talk about electoral bond is not particularly a debt instrument. It is not a debt instrument. What is it? It is only a donation instrument. Normally, when you or I would invest in a debt instrument or would invest in a government bond like a treasury bill, we are investing in order to get something back. So what do we get? We get principal plus interest, or we get some kind of return on our investment. Now this bond, whatever we invest, the principal amount, if I invest in this, I have given that principal amount and I am the bearer of that bond. I mean, I bear that bond. If I am the bearer of that bond, I bear that bond, would I get the money back? No, I will not get the money back. Forget interest. I will not even get the principal amount back. That will go to the political party I have bought the bonds of. So in this particular case, why is it called a bond? This is not a bone of contention, but I'm just telling you, if you are asked a question that you should know, then this instrument is called a bond. And normally bond is considered to be an investment instrument, but when we talk about electoral bonds, these have nothing got to do with an investment or ROI, return on investment. Right? An interesting article. Now coming to the next article that focuses on GS3, economics, given on page 16. Now, this talks about what? It talks about duty. Import duty. Simultaneously, we will also discuss export duty. Import duty, export duty. When I say import duty, import basically means the duty which is leviable on any kind of import by Government of India. So that's termed as import duty. It's basically a tax that you have to pay to the government of a particular country if you are importing goods from some other country. They are entering our territory. Government is allowing you to sell those goods in the territory or use the goods in the territory, and you are importing it from some other country. So it is taking a fees or a tax or a charge. And this is not something new. It has been going on ever since. So the trade that used to happen at the time of Indus Valley civilization, you remember the name of the dockyard? The dockyard at that time was Lothal. It was in Gujarat. At that time also, a tax was charged on whatever was imported and exported from India and to India. And since then, till now, it is being followed, which is why it is called a custom. Charging a tax is a custom in every country, and so is India. So it has been done from 2500 BC, which is why we call it a custom duty, right? So custom duty is nothing but a tax which is leviable on imports as well as exports. You may also call it import duty, or if you are exporting goods, you can call them, or you can call it an export duty. This is a part of duty or tax that the Government of India charges. Now let's come to the article. The article is talking about that the duties on EVs, electric vehicles, especially on the car automobile manufacturing company Tesla, have been slashed big time. So this focuses on the part of environment, that now the Government of India is letting electric vehicles take over the market of India, and the duties which were leviable on imported cars are being reduced, which basically sends a message that Government of India is promoting the use of EVs in India, which means it is serious about its claim of reducing the carbon emissions by over 70% and coming down to net carbon emission policy of India supposed to be zero by 2070. It has to start from somewhere, and automobile is the way to go. Let me also tell you, till 7-8 years back, the Government of India did not allow EVs to come into India or Tesla to come into India. Reason being that oil, crude, Brent, diesel, this crude oil or these imports, these things, use of oil gives a huge revenue to the Government of India, and that revenue is in the form of taxes. When you get that huge revenue, you don't want to lose out on that revenue. You don't want to lose out on the taxes, which is why they did not allow EVs to come into India for the longest time. But it's about time that it is allowed. So as you can see, the Indian government announced reduction in import duty for EVs imported as completely built units from 70% to 15%. From 70 to 15%, they reduced big time. So this is a huge duty cut. The car that would have costed you 70% higher now would cost you only 15% higher because the import duty has been slashed. The reduced duty is applicable where maker establishes a local manufacturing unit within 3 years. So this is an example of Make in India, that you have to make in India, only then you would be given this kind of an exemption. An EV maker must meet conditions like minimum investment of 4,100 crores, $500 million, and achieving 25% domestic value addition within 3 years. So this can be achieved by any manufacturer across the world. Reason being that India is a very big market. India is a growing market, it's a huge market, and there's very big demand. So investment of 4,100 crore rupees or $500 million is not a very big deal. It's not a very big thing, which is why now you see Chinese EV manufacturer by the name of BYD also investing in India. So now you will see BYD cars that are coming into India that are basically targeting the entire Indian market. And this is something that can be seen as this particular part, right? So this has been done. Again, an interesting article. Followed by this, GS3, security, again, page number 16. Now, what security are we talking about? We are talking about cyber security. Cyber threat is a bigger threat than threats on borders. It's a bigger threat than the threats on borders. Now, why I say so, let's understand. Now, this was stated by the RBI governor, right? So the threat is real. And RBI governor is a money man and who talks about mostly financial matters. What kind of threat would he talk about is the question. So when he talks about a specific threat, what all do we know about it and how much do we know about it is something that matters a lot. So use of technology is one part. Followed by that, the second thing he talked about was our behavior. How our behavior towards use of technology. Use of technology, how much do we understand? And do we really care about the kind of technology we use? Do we really care about sharing of OTPs, sharing of financial data, sharing of, you can say, sensitive data with other people, even family members? That is called as behavioral analysis. So along with the financial information, behavioral analysis, technology plus behavior are two things that have to be combined that actually may pose a security threat for anyone who's specifically using financial information, and it might result into fraud. So monitor transactions that are happening during odd hours, like transaction happening during the night. Why is it happening during the night? People sleep at night, right? Why is it happening? What is so pressing that you are doing a high volume or a high value transaction at 3 in the morning? So this should be flagged. So the point is that technology can result into a fraud, but technology, if used properly, can also be used to prevent frauds. So if you see that monitoring transactions in odd hours, transactions deviating from usual patterns, unauthorized beneficiary additions, this is called basically the financial trail, money trail. These things would help you understand the frauds that are prospectively happening, and it is very easy to understand. Let me also tell you, if you track the bank account of companies, had the bank account of people like Nirav Modi or Vijay Mallya would have been tracked, you would have understood instantly what is happening, what is it that they are doing. So there's this risk of a financial misspell, financial fraud that might happen in the future. It should have alerted you at that point of time. The point is you were turning a blind eye to what was happening at that point of time. I hope you're able to understand. So the risk of technology uses, while technology can be beneficial, there are risks associated with its utilization without appropriate safeguards. We need safeguards, and it includes compromising customer data, invasion of privacy, subtle manipulations based on consumer profiling, anything. I mean, so basically privacy can be compromised, and for that you need safeguards. The patterns should be understood in order to be able to prevent any kind of fraudulent transactions. So in order to have a more secure tech environment and protect it from any kind of cyber fraud, protect any kind of company from failing, you need safeguards into place. When we talk about safeguards, use technology for consumer behavior analysis to mitigate potential risks that might arise in future. If you see certain unnatural transaction or transaction that is not just like the regular course, then you should question that account, you should question the account holder. Utilization of AI. Now this is very easy. Any kind of AI can be used to track or understand any kind of transaction that might pose a security threat in the future. Ombudsman scheme. Ombudsman basically is a person who's called a grievance redressal officer, GRO, or has a grievance redressal mechanism. This is something that has to be done, just like Ombudsman has been appointed at a banking stage. It is a very recent phenomena in 2006, banking ombudsman scheme. Ombudsman is a grievance redressal officer. Let's say I face any kind of problem with any bank. I would approach the grievance redressal mechanism, banking ombudsman, and he would help me out. That office would help me out with everything. Similarly, if any person is facing any kind of potential risk or thinks that he or she is a part of some fraud, then he can approach the ombudsman. But for that, you need to have an ombudsman. So that would restore the trust of ordinary citizens. So it would provide an independent avenue for unresolved grievances, facilitate fair redressal of customer complaints. All these things would happen. Lastly, ombudsman framework, whatever is existing, that needs to be approved. So basically, this is a combined point. So all these things, they result in what? They result in making sure that we made a more safe and secure environment as a part of our development. So this was today's newspaper. We have analyzed multiple articles in today's newspaper. I hope you were able to understand multiple things. Now there are questions which are not given over here. They got edited out, but I would give you the questions. And the PPT that has been put up for downloading, you can find the questions over there, but I would just dictate the question over here. If you are noting it down, you may note it down. The first question is, critically analyze the potential impact of electoral bonds on the democratic fabric of the country, considering issues such as financial transparency, level playing field for political parties, and the influence of corporate interest on the governance. So these are three things. I'll repeat the question. Critically analyze the potential impact of electoral bonds on the domestic fabric of the country, considering issues such as financial transparency, level playing field for political parties, and the influence of corporate interest on governance. So this is to be answered in 150 words. The weightage is 10 marks. Second question is, analyze the role of inflation in influencing monetary and fiscal policies. Very important question. This can be asked in different forms in prelims about CPI, headline inflation, WPI. So analyze the role of inflation in influencing monetary and fiscal policies, as well as its impact on income distribution, purchasing power, and savings. What is the impact of inflation on income distribution, on purchasing power, on savings? Obviously, your savings would get eroded. Your purchasing power would come down. Income distribution, no matter how well you distribute the income, but still, every person is a victim of inflation. Again, 150 words, 10 marks. So these are the questions which are important for mains that you have to focus upon. So I hope that you liked the articles, the coverage that was done. It was pretty holistic, and see you in the next class. See you tomorrow. Anything as a suggestion would be more than welcomed. You can give the suggestions in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, and there's a workshop that is happening today evening. Do register for that workshop for General Studies Foundation 2025 approach. Bye everyone, take care and all the best.